This is WFYI News Now. It's January 27th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a bill that would make several funding changes to Indiana's Medicaid expansion program, several bills that would make Hoosiers pay some of the cost of building small modular nuclear reactors, and a bill that is working its way through the Statehouse aims to improve the process around rape kits in Indiana.
Our Indiana crime labs are often unable to pay competitive wages, as the people working in these labs can get higher paying jobs with the degrees that they are required to receive.
Those stories coming up, but first. Indiana University President Pamela Whitten is facing accusations of plagiarism in her doctoral dissertation. But as Aubrey Wright reports, IU officials say there's nothing to those accusations.
The Chronicle of Higher Education is reporting plagiarism in Whitten's work after an anonymous tip. Whitten published her dissertation in the 1990s with the University of Kansas on telecommunications. Plagiarism and copyright expert Jonathan Bailey reviewed the dissertation. Bailey says Whitten committed two mistakes: improperly paraphrasing and incorrectly citing sources. Despite these mistakes, Bailey says Whitten's writing doesn't seem malicious or fraudulent.
There are problems. Would I like to see a correction in the dissertation? Yes. But do I think this should be the end of Whitten's academic career? Do I think she should lose her PhD or have these other drastic actions taken? No.
IU spokesperson Mark Bodie said an independent law firm has investigated these plagiarism claims surrounding Whitten's dissertation and said they have, quote, no merit. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Aubrey Wright.
A House committee approved a bill that would make several funding changes to Indiana's Medicaid expansion program. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports those changes would affect how hospitals are reimbursed by the state.
Indiana currently covers most of its share of HIP through the Hospital Assessment Fee Program. Lawmakers want to restructure how that program works with the goal of redirecting money to small and rural hospitals. The legislation was drafted in partnership with healthcare stakeholders, such as the Insurance Institute of Indiana and the Indiana Hospital Association. Tim Kennedy serves as general counsel for the Hospital Association. He says in order for the funding redesign to work, the state has to be able to implement it.
We can figure out the law, and we can figure out the numbers, but there's a third component of this that's very important, which is to make it operational, to make it easy for FSSA to operate.
The legislation would also make a number of other changes, including a new fee on insurance companies to cover the state's portion of medical service reimbursements. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
The bill now heads to the House Ways and Means Committee for consideration. Several bills that would make Hoosiers pay some of the cost of building small modular nuclear reactors are working their way through the Indiana Statehouse. But as Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports, a bill that passed committee last Thursday would allow the tech companies driving the need for these plants to share that cost.
Companies like Amazon and Meta plan to build large data centers in Indiana that need a lot of power 24/7. They also have climate goals, which makes nuclear an attractive option. The bill would create a pilot program to build up to 2 small nuclear plants in the state. Its author, Republican Senator Eric Cook, says utilities could team up with all kinds of stakeholders on the projects: tech companies, universities, military installations, or nuclear manufacturers.
One of the eligible partners could provide capital, which reduces the amount that may go into rates.
But some consumer and environmental advocates say small nuclear plants are still too risky of an investment for Hoosiers to bear. None have been built in the U.S. yet, and many of those projects have gone billions of dollars over budget. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
A recent Purdue University study shows retired coal plants that aren't near heavily populated areas could be viable sites, including the Rockport coal plant, which is expected to close in 3 years. And for our final story today, Indiana has at least 600 rape kits waiting to be tested at the state's crime labs. And there are potentially many more in local law enforcement agencies waiting to be sent to the labs. A House committee unanimously advanced a bill last week to help eliminate that backlog. Rape kits that are a part of a police report in Indiana must be sent to one of the state's 2 crime labs, and Republican Representative Becky Cash's bill would spend $2.5 million to give those labs the boost they need to clear their backlog.
Our Indiana crime labs are often unable to pay competitive wages, as the people working in these labs can get higher paying jobs with the degrees that they are required to receive.
Beth White is the head of the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault. She says ensuring kits are tested is the least the state could do to honor victims' bravery.
Evidence collected through rape kit testing can identify serial rapists and can protect future victims.
The bill now goes to the House and Ways Committee, which will consider the funding amount. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.